the Not Just for Boys programme is, I think, something that we learned quite early on in the development of the programme is that girls aren't offered these opportunities. If you're 15, 16, 17 and you don't know what you want to do, you will be pushed down the route of Her Beauty Nails. And that actually still happens today. And we see this. This is important. So that's really good. And the boys are pushed into construction. Her Beauty Nails, social care, childcare pays a lot less than these other jobs. And so our kind of mission and vision is about, offering this to girls as a first step, but also showing the money and the potential earnings that can happen, because it's much, much, much more lucrative. So stereotypes remain deeply, deeply embedded in our society today. And that's why the theme of Break the Bias is so apt. And it's also why I am very excited to be here today to hear from our panelists and hear about their career journeys. So what factors help them to succeed, and their views on what can be done to attract and maintain more women and girls into this very creative, lucrative tech industry. And I've already had learned so much this morning. It's been, my school day is almost over, but it's actually only begun because it's only 10 o'clock. So first of all, we're going to hear from everybody around about the career journeys. And I would ask you all to, if I just introduced you, and when you're, rather than me going through your bios, just to tell us a bit about actually what you do before you talk about your journey. So Beth, can I start with you? You're joining us virtually. Beth Glenfield is product manager at Datadog, and is joining us from Paris. Are you?
Yes, I'm in Paris. So it's 11 o'clock for me, so not quite as early this morning. I've already had one cup of coffee, maybe looking at having a second one pretty quickly. So yeah, I recently moved to Paris in August for a new job. So yeah, I'll dive into sort of my career journey. It actually started whenever I was looking at my A levels. I went through the whole process of, do I want to be a doctor? Do I want to be an accountant and follow in my father's footsteps? And so I chose all sciences at A level. I did sciences and maths. And it was at that point I realized that I was terrible at chemistry. So I was like, okay, so doctor's out of the question. Also realized I wasn't really into maths. So, okay, accountant's out of the question. But I did love physics. So I applied to university to study physics with astrophysics, and was ready to sort of go down this path. And then the summer before university, I decided not to go down this path. And so I was looking at Queen's, that's where I was applying. And I was looking through their different degrees. And I was like, what could I do with what A levels I have? And then I noticed that software engineering, it was really focusing on tech, but then you also worked with customers and you work with people and you work as part of a team. And as my mom likes to say, I do have a bit of the gift of the gab. So I liked that I could still keep that interaction, but still focus like very heavily on tech and science. So I rang the university. I asked, could I switch onto software engineering as my degree? They said, once you have your grades, we'll sort of see if there's an option there for you. And luckily enough, there was. So I moved into software engineering, studied that for 4 years, was incredibly lucky to have a placement year with a software company based in Belfast called Puppet. And they're a very small American company, and they had just opened an office in Belfast. I was the 13th hire, so very small team, and was still deciding whether this was a career that was for me. And during that year, I fell in love with technology. I fell in love with working with people in the sector, and just really got a lot out of that experience, and was very lucky to get an offer to come back whenever I was a graduate. So I was a software engineer with Puppet for about four and a half years. And during that time, I had a great support team, like support network. My manager was incredible, Steve Quinn, and he really pushed me to sort of think broadly what I wanted to do next. So what were my next steps, 5-10-year goals? And we discussed it, and I loved, again, talking to sort of customers, getting more input into what they wanted us to build. And so product management was a path that came up during those conversations. And we recently got a new VP of product at the time. So I reached out, set up some meetings, and we discussed sort of me moving into a product management role, and I got another sort of lucky opportunity, and I got to move within Puppet and really learned a lot in that time. This was during COVID, so it was in 2021, just last year. And then, yes, really like learned a lot in 6 months. And whenever things started opening up again, I was really wanting to look at a different type of company. So moving away from that smaller sort of startup, growing company. And Datadog is a hyper growth company, so much bigger. We're like moving it very fast. And so I reached out to the team. And initially it was for a remote role. So we got talking, I went through the various interviews, and then during the interviews, they were going well. It was put on the table, would I be up for relocating to Paris? And after 2 years at home, I thought, why not? Like, let's go. Let's take this opportunity. And now I've been here since August, and it's been great. Really, really enjoying the experience.
Thank you very much, Beth. I'm jealous, kind of being in Paris today on International Women's Day. Is it
it's definitely not like Emily in Paris. I will.
Oh, is it not?
Some things.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Beth. Now we'll move to Chloe.
Yeah.
Chloe Thompson is Cognitive Science Engineer at AFLAC. Is that right?
That's right.
Northern Ireland, and Director at Women Who Code Belfast.
Yes.
So do you want to tell us a bit about your journey, Chloe?
Yes, I will. So as you said, I'm a Cognitive Science Engineer at AFLAC Northern Ireland. So we are a global centre for digital and security for our Fortune 500 company, AFLAC, in the States. So we focus on American health insurance. And if you'd have told me maybe a couple of years ago that I'd work in health insurance for a big American company, I'd probably go, ugh, like, doesn't sound very, very appealing. But it is one of the most exciting roles I've had. And when I started, a very similar story to Beth, I was in my secondary education, and from my second year in school, I was in love with IT and technology and design, and I carried that through all the way through my GCSEs and my A levels. And I sat down. My mum sat me down when I was picking my GCSEs, and she said, "You have to get yourself straight now. You have to pick a path, and you've got to be prepared." So when I flicked through the book, I was like, oh, I don't think I could be a doctor. And I definitely don't think, I'm a bit squeamish. I don't think I could be a nurse. And I went through and I narrowed things down and set my sights on some type of engineering. And at that time I thought, well, that's narrow enough for me. And when I got to my upper sixth studies and I had to choose, I was torn between product design engineering, which I know Naomi did. And you did as well. So I had that in one hand, and I had software and electronic systems engineering in the other hand. Now, I knew nothing about electronics, and I had no idea what this course was about, but I thought, well, we may as well just give it a go. And if it's awful, it's awful. And if it works out, then that'll be great. So I did my 5-year degree and I got my master's. And during that time, I did a placement year with Kainos here in Belfast. I'm sure a lot of you know of Kainos. And I was in their innovation team, and I really found that was something that I completely enjoyed. You know, sitting in a room and being a software developer and coding wasn't really what I wanted to do all the time. I really wanted to be that. I want to talk to people. I want to gather your ideas. So that sort of set me on the path of, I'm interested in machine learning and AI and data, and I want to speak to people. And when I went back into university, I did a couple of roles. I worked as a data intern for a door board.
It really what resonates with me in that, when you think about the background and my work, like in the third sector, is that we're always saying our jobs are for purpose, you know, doing something for purpose, but it's exactly what you're all doing as well. Yeah. But we kind of shout about it, and it's like, no, we're the good people. We're the good people, but you know, it's that tech for good and all of that. So really, really interesting. I'm also thinking from what both of you are saying is my youngest daughter now is picking her GCSEs this week. Well, Thursday I think we've meeting, and I'm going, oh, because physics has been left out, and you know, there's a whole big thing. I think that we'll maybe talk about later on in the discussion. Thank you very much. Can I now introduce Professor Helen McCarthy, who is Chief Executive at Fiona Therapeutics Limited. It's Fiona, yeah?
Yes.
Fiona Therapeutics Limited. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your journey, Helen?
Well, I'm going to start a little bit later, okay? So
Okay.
I'm going to start post-PhD. I'll start off with the caveat of how many of you in the room or indeed online have started off with a little bit of a sniffle at the start of the day, and by the end of the day, you have a cold and it's everywhere, your throat's sore, your head's sore, you feel really, really unwell. And the reason for that is because viruses are incredibly good at getting into every cell in your body, okay? So I want you to hold that thought while I tell you how I got to that point. So after my PhD, I did a postdoc with two really inspirational mentors, Professor David Hurst and Professor Tracy Robson, and they taught us how to have integrity, have ethics, to do things properly, to treat people well, and to call out whenever things are not done correctly. And I say this very intentionally because I think this is something that women are not particularly good at, and we have to get better at it. So whenever I did my postdoc with them, and for anybody who knows what it's like when you do a PhD and you go on to do a postdoc, you then end up finishing all these experiments and getting all these papers for your principal investigator, but then you've got to get a permanent job yourself. So I was fortunate enough to be offered a lectureship in the School of Pharmacy in Queen's University in 2006. And that lectureship was got because I finished everything I started. So even if I didn't like doing something, I finished it. I made sure everything was finished and completed well within time. And that has stayed with me the whole way through. And whenever I got my lectureship, I remember my PI saying to me, "It's great you've got your lectureship, but now you've got to go and find your own research area." What? What do you mean I've got to go and find my own research area? I've been working on prostate cancer gene therapy. And I said, no, you've got to go and find your own research area. So I thought, what really excites me? Where's there a problem? There's a problem. Back in the day, there was a problem with gene therapy, not in the actual genes, not in the actual messenger RNA to cure disease, but in the taxi service or the delivery system to take the DNA to where it needs to go. So in gene therapy, DNA has to get inside a cell, inside the nucleus. Messenger RNA in your vaccines, that has to get inside the cytoplasm of the cell. So each of your cells has got this area, nucleus in the center, cytoplasm in between there before the cell membrane. We've got to get our messenger RNA in there. So I said, okay, I'm going to find a new way of doing delivery systems for messenger RNA. Interestingly, at the time, a very learned professor in Queen's University turned around one day when I told him this was my plan for my research career and what I was going to do. He said, "Gene therapy? Who is ever working on gene therapy?" You can imagine how great I'm feeling right now. So what then happened was I said, okay, I need to go out and find out how viruses enter cells really, really well. So I looked up all the people working in the field and I found this guy called Dr. Arash Hatifi, and he was in Washington State University. And he was working on what we called nanomedicine then. And he was making proteins that mimicked viruses, but they weren't viruses, so they can't cause any harm, just to be clear. And so what I did was I said, sent him an email, can I come work for you over the summer and learn some techniques? So he was in a campus called Pullman in Washington State. To say that it was a redneck state would be an understatement of the century. I remember literally flying there, and I flew in there at night. I flew to Seattle, got a plane then to Pullman, that's what you called it, population of 10,000 people. Plane landed, somebody picked me up, took me to an apartment, and I'm quite into my fitness and things, and I can remember after, I think it was about 3 months I was there, and at the start, it was really difficult going up and down hills, cycling, running, and I couldn't understand why. And I was working in the lab every night to midnight at least, trying to get as much as I could out of the experience. And I only realized after a period of time when one of my colleagues said, look, let's take this weekend off. Let's go over to Oregon and have a look. And we drove in the car and we started going down, 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 down. I was like, I didn't even know that I'd been living on the largest wheat plain at the highest 3,000 meters above sea level for months on end, because I was so into the science and what we were doing. Even right now, I'm so into the science and what we're doing. You ask me a general question of general knowledge, I won't have the answer to that. But I could tell you an awful lot about messenger RNA vaccines. Anyway, cut a many years short. I then learned that you could actually make peptides of natural amino acids that mimic viruses, but they're not viruses, and they can take your cargo inside a cell without the cell knowing the cargo has got inside the cell. Now, if you think about this, and you think about messenger RNA vaccines, you realize that everybody's had a messenger RNA vaccine quite recently, and that is your messenger RNA with a liposome around the outside. So you have your messenger RNA in the middle, the liposome goes around it like that, and it enters into when they give you injection, that will take some of the cargo into the cells, but you have an immune response to those lipids. So because you have what we call an innate immune response, that's cleared very, very quickly. And because it's cleared very quickly, then you lose the efficacy of the vaccine. So you have to get a higher dose to compensate that. So academically, took me 50 grants before somebody would believe this, that it would work. 50, I kid you not. I was the most failed academic you could ever see, not for the want of trying, but for the fact that everyone's like, no, it's not a polymer, it's not a liposome, it's not a recombinant virus, no chance. And then the grants started to come. And then we started to publish that this worked. And whenever we added the peptide to the messenger RNA, this was phenomenal. So after about 10 years of academic work, of grants, papers, 30 PhD students supervised, postdocs supervised, I said, right, I'm bored now. I can't be a professor just sitting in my ivory tower, not taking this to the next stage. And I said, okay, we're going to spin this out. So 8th of May, 2017, we spun this out into Fiona Therapeutics. Why? Because the delivery system is actually pH responsive and it delivers ions, which is messenger RNA. And so now we won in Invent Northern Ireland. Sorry about that, Fiona. But I'm not better. But I actually used the prize money, which wasn't very much money, to take myself off to Boston and partnerships in drug delivery and talk to the industry about what we were doing. There is a point to this story, trust me. And so literally what happened then was we got some collaborative contracts, things like that. And then we were able to survive for a few years. And we also won the All Ireland Seed Corn Awards, which again gave us more money for the most investable startup. We had no plans of taking any money, but we went along anyway and made sure that we got the prize money and essentially ended up using that to help grow the team a little bit. So what then happened was, I'll never forget it. I actually fell out with one of the co-founders of the company because he wanted to do a vaccine in mugwort. And I said, I am not putting my name to a vaccine in mugwort. You can forget that. So I said, we are doing our first vaccine in HPV-driven cancers. Okay, so HPV-driven cancers are very high in areas of poor socioeconomic status, particularly in females, but also head and neck cancer, particularly in really that sort of community that doesn't have the same access to healthcare resources as everywhere else. So essentially we went to Innovate UK and we got a biomedical catalyst grant and we got the prelim data for the HPV-driven vaccine. The data was really good. We then got money from Innovate UK for a triple antigen COVID vaccine, which we're working through that at the moment. So the messenger RNA, we can deliver multiple antigens and we can also stabilize this at room temperature for up to 18 months. It will go longer than 18 months, but we've just experimented it to 18 months. We now have a pipeline of 6 messenger RNA vaccines. We also have got around 2.5 million from Innovate UK over the last 2 years, and we have secured. Went out and I was trying to raise pre-Series A money. Somebody found us through Boston Consulting Group from back in the day when I went to Boston Consulting, and they approached us and said, "You see your Series A? Forget it. We will do your pre-Series A and we'll do your Series A." And we are now starting toxicology on our HPV vaccine. I was on a call yesterday with clinicians from the Marsden and then previously the Christie. We're running our HPV modular clinical trial. towards the end of this year or the start of January 2023. And we are about to complete our 5,000 square foot of premises down in Catalyst. It's about to be refurbed, and the team of it's around 15 now. We're heading down there. Now, the delivery system may be stealth-like, but I would say we've also operated in stealth-like fashion. We have had people who have not believed in us. It has been a fight every step of the way. We have been in a basement with no windows, Queen's University Belfast. I am not actually joking about this, but the people that are successful have resilience, and I think that's what counts. I'll shut up now and let somebody else talk.
Very inspirational, Helen. And this more question for me, my clarification of me, I'm not going to say stupidity because it's not true.
No.
The Hpv vaccine, there is a Hpv vaccine, isn't there?
There is an HPV
kids?
vaccine to prevent people from getting. So it's a prophylactic vaccine. So it's given to 14-year-old girls and actually also boys for genital warts, things like that. But the problem is there's around 300 million people worldwide who don't have the vaccine. And so what are we going to do about those? It's going to take 30 years to potentially get everybody vaccinated. But of course, it's only in developed regions that people are getting that vaccine. And there's also a really high incidence of HPV-driven head and neck cancer as well. And so we need to treat people with this. And because our delivery system gets the messenger RNA into the immune cell that we want, the immune cell, the response that you get is what we call a cytotoxic immune response, and that will actually give you a therapeutic clearance. So that's what we're doing with that.
Very, very interesting. I mean, I have to say it is my experience as well that nothing worthwhile ever comes easy. Everything that is actually, important, or the stuff that you're talking about, it's never easy because there's always the naysayers. It's always a fight and a push.
I always say to people that I don't want to hear the problem. I want to hear the solutions.
Yeah. And failure is fine.
Yes.
Because failure is your learning piece. Yeah. It's amazing. Okay, thank you very much. And next we're going to move to Shan Farrell, who is Chief Scientific Officer at STEM Oxygen. Shan, over to you for your story.
Thank you. Well, I'd just like to say where I'm at the moment, and again, take you on that journey of how I got to here. So as you know, I'm Chief Scientific Officer of STEM Oxygen. We're a relatively new Ulster University spin-out. We incorporated about a year ago, but I've really only delved into this full time come December 2021. So it's all fairly new. And what we do is we're developing a oxygen generating nanoparticle to improve the effects of radiotherapy for the treatment of cancer. So how did I get here? I was a little girl from a council estate in Coleraine. So chances are, as you're maybe told all the time, you're not going to go very far, or you think that way. And I believe the reason that I've gone so far and become so successful is because of my parents, because they also came from a council estate. But they are so driven. And they support, I think they just wanted us to do so well, so that, I think, and I'm just listening to everyone's stories, I'm realising things that have actually got me to here, and it's all to do with my mum and dad, I think. But anyway, I went to a little school in Melbourne. I was always what you would say one of the boys, except that's not true. I'm just me. I was playing football, I was a skateboarder, I was a rock chick.
Okay.
I thought it was Avril Lavigne at one stage. So yeah, whenever I had a little mini concert in the town hall in Coleraine back in 2003. I thought, I'm going to be a rock chick. I'm going to be singing with Dave Grohl and the Foo Fighters. That's the way my life was going to take me. But then I started collecting the horrible histories, horrible science, and I was like, oh yes, I still haven't to this day. Moving on to big school, I went to Dominican College in Port Stewart, a very artsy school, more for your drama and music type people, and that's what I thought I wanted to do. And of course, as I went through school, I realised actually I have a real passion for science, always did. And people are like, coming to pick your GCSEs and your A level. It's like, what are you going off to do at uni, Shan? I'm going to become a pharmacist. Are you not doing music? I'm like, no. I'm thinking, what's wrong? Should I not be going off and doing a science career? And am I not evil enough for it? But anyway, I just, you know what, I'm always a bit of a rebellious one. I just stick to my guns and do whatever I want. And the reason I didn't do music is because I thought I want to keep that as a hobby. That's my outlet. And I remember learning the oboe. I know I could have been in an orchestra too. Learning the oboe, and I hated it so much because I was forced to play it all the time. And I told my mum, I don't want to do this anymore. And I felt like she was like, you have to do this, you have to do this. And I'm like, no, do you know what? I'm not doing it. I'm going to play the guitar instead and play the drums and do whatever I want, which I think's made me so. Well, I'm not rebellious. I'm not, going to start riots or anything, but it makes me stick. It makes me once I've made my mind set on something, I'm going to go and do it. So yeah, taking me to university now. I remember picking my A levels and science, chemistry, biology, music, and Spanish. It's a bit. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know what I wanted to commit myself to. And I said to Mum, what do you want to do, Shan? I'm like, I think I want to go and do chemistry in uni. She's like, you're never going to get a job in that. I laugh now. But anyway, okay. Right, okay, I'll be a pharmacist, because you get to do chemistry, you get to do biology, you get to do all these different fields of science, sorry. And at the end of the day, you still have a career to fall back on. People are saying to me, that's a really great career choice for you, Shan, because it's great for you being a mother as well in the future. And I'm like, oh right, okay. And at 18, I'm not thinking about kids anyway, and you hear it time, oh, great work-life balance, great, 9 to 5, you'll get home and you can raise your children. I'm like, oh, right. I never thought much of it at the time. But a good thing, I guess, about the pharmacy thing, I'm surrounded, it is a very female-led field. And maybe that is the reason a lot of women do go into it. But what I would say, I think it's done well for me, is I've always been surrounded by women and men as well. But, I've always been surrounded by confident women in the world of pharmacy. And in my career as well as a pharmacist. So I went through pharmacy anyway. Coming to your final year project, you have to do a dissertation at the end, and you have the choice of going down the route of a pharmacy practice field. So like go out into community pharmacy and do some kind of healthcare research, or you can go into the lab and do some hardcore science. What do you think I did? Well, all the women were going and doing their pharmacy practice surveys, and I'm like, I'm not doing that, I'm going with the boys. So off I go into the lab, and I loved every second of it in the cancer research project. And I thought, right, I better go and be a pharmacist, have my career to fall back on, so I can be a mother in the future and work. 2 years into that, I was like, nah, I'm going back to the lab. I'm going to go do hardcore research. I don't care. I'm going back. I came back to Coleraine. So I actually went to Bristol, and Bristol's another great addition to my story, because it's a city where you can be who you want to be. And again, it's very, they do drive hard on like gender equality, and not just gender equality, every single right you can think of. And again, surrounded by so many successful women over there. And I just saw, all I saw was potential. No, I never really saw any barriers to my, like, what I could, who I want to be or what I could be. But eventually I thought, okay, I've had enough of this away from the nest, and coming back to Coleraine. Yes. I love Coleraine. So back in my mum and dad, and I went and did my PhD at Ulster, again with the same supervisor I started off with. Loved it. I loved every second of it. COVID hit, of course. We were kept at home for a little while. But in my time of being a PhD student, I would see these postdocs coming and going on, like, so postdoc researchers, there's a project that's funded for maybe a year and a half, and they're working on the lab in this really exciting piece of research for their PI, as Helen mentioned, and they're driving the data, they're generating all these results, giving all of the material for the papers and the grants, and the next thing the money runs out and they're like, right, see you later, bye, thanks, we'll get someone else now. And I'm like, why can they not see the potential of this research and take it forward? That's something that always bugged me. So whenever we have a technology transfer officer at Ulster University who helps commercialise research and is meant to support you in that, and he told me about the iCure project. And this stands for Innovation to Commercialisation of University Research, and it's run by Innovate UK. And it gives early career researchers the chance to commercially validate their research at a very early stage. You don't even have to have a prototype. You just go out and you speak to people. And I thought, oh God, that's a really great idea. I'd love to be part of that. So I was released from the lab, and I was allowed to go and have conversations with people. It was a great experience. And it was really great to see it. This was only September 2020 that I was able to bridge the gap between university lab research from the bench to real world science. and realised that actually this is possible. We don't just have to keep generating results in the lab and just moving away from it. So I went through that. I spoke to a lot of different people, realised the true application of our technology, and then went through to apply for £300,000 from Innovate UK. And I got that basically by myself. I wrote the application and the supervisors looked over it. They really let me take the lead in this. I thought they were going to be like, right, thank you, we'll take it from here now. But they're allowing me to push this project, and I'm getting such great support from my uni and such great support from Catalyst and everyone else, which leads me on. Then I, of course, applied for Invent last year, met the wonderful Kerry, and we were successful in winning that. And again, for me, applying for Catalyst wasn't just, or the Invent Awards wasn't just for the money, because I'm sure you know, £26,000 doesn't go very far in science. So it was more about the support we get from them and how they put you out there and to connect you with people. And I think, you know, it's great to be on a pillar with these women today and be connected to like-minded women. And it's just very emotional, actually. It's really, but yeah, that's a bit of a wimble-amble story, but yeah, got the money from Catalyst. We won each category. We are now in full-time. This was just September past there that we won. Yeah, December 2021. This is where my new journey started now. As I guess a scientific, businessy, kind of commercially.
It's only a few weeks ago.
Woman, isn't it?
It's actually a few weeks ago.
That's why I think I'm just in my head. I'm spinning everything around. Like, can I really do this? So that's my very discombobulated story.
I'm gonna, two things I would pick up on your input there. One is you must be great crack at a party with your robo.
No, the school board took me. The school board took it back off me, unfortunately.
Yeah, we should invest someone.
I know.
And I think the other bit about, well, it's the same as our Not Just Voice programme. It's how important parents are in decisions, because like we did this kind of, I can't remember what it's called. It was like something design thinking. Like we spent 2 days doing it. Like, what are the barriers for girls moving into these careers? And what we had completely missed out, and you know, there's all of these different things about career choice or subject choice and and what we completely missed out, what we realised was parents. So you go home and you say, like, and so in my case, but Mum, I really want to be a plumber. Why so? Right, so that it would be the same, and if your parents don't understand the area that you want to go into, so there's massive kind of influence there, and careers teachers is the other bit, so those two things, but the OPO definitely. Thank you very much, Shan. So to our final panelists this morning, Naomi Mcgregor, who is CEO and founder of MoveTrue. Naomi.
Hi, so my story actually relates quite a lot to these other ladies, which is amazing because I've never been in a room where I've heard such similar stories and heard the impact of last minute decisions of changing to university. For my journey, I also went to an all-girls school, and whenever I was choosing my GCSEs, my mum never asked me, what do you want to be when you grow up? She just said, keep it diverse. Figure it out. And I love this because my mum, if you were to ask her what she wants to do, she goes, we'll just go. And she's an entrepreneur, and she just, like, you just take it and take the opportunities as they come. And I was able to see at a very young age that she just allowed opportunities to happen and to follow them. And she raised all of us, like me and my brother and sister, the same way, that wait for the opportunity and do what you enjoy. And if you're doing that, then you'll be happy. And that was always the case for Mum and what she advised us to do. So I did my GCSEs, kept it the most diverse I could. And again, in A levels, I sat down with my parents and said, I should probably think what I want to do for my degree. And they said, just figure it out, just do something that keeps it flexible. And I did maths, technology and design, and business studies with AS physics. And whenever I looked at degree choices, you got into quite a range. So I thought, okay, that's fine. And I was meant to be going to study economics. And the day of my A-level results, I got into economics and ran down the hall to my mum, and I was like, I got into Queen's, got in, I'm going to university. And then I was like, well, I just go back to bed. I'm not that excited. And she said, okay, if you're not that excited, we need to do something, because you're about to enter into a course that you need to be excited about. And I decided, okay, I'll go into the careers department, and they're the ones that have constantly said, you're good at maths and you're good at being creative. So accountancy, economics, actuarial sciences, something along those lines is where you should probably go. And I went in again and I opened the book up and it landed in product design engineering. I had never heard of this degree before. The day of the A-level results, I hadn't heard of it. And I looked at it and I thought, kind of sounds like technology and design. That sounds like sounds like good fun. Let's change. So we rang up and said, this is her results. Can she change? And they said, yeah, just apply. That's fine. So I went in and had no idea what was coming over the next few years. I thought I was going to be there for 3 years, in, out, away I go. Ended up being there for 5 by the time that I did placement and masters. And I realized that I signed up to way more than I thought. And even during that, I didn't know what I wanted to be. I was doing what I really enjoyed. And that was, for me, I had the backing that my parents just kept saying, do what opens opportunities. And if you're enjoying it, you have that ability. And it was, again, as these other ladies have been saying, it was the role models that I got to see that I decided I can just apply to things. And if I like it, I can keep going. And if I don't, that's fine. I spent my placement year in a large dairy factory. The year I found out I was also lactose intolerant, so that was quite ironic. So they didn't need to worry about me taste testing anything. And I realized I really love manufacturing. And the bit I really enjoyed was problem solving. And that, for me, I got to get my hands dirty. I would come home and I'd be head to toe in cheese and it wouldn't bother me. I'd be like, I got to get my hands dirty today. And my parents would be like, you're in suit trousers, come on. Why did you do this to yourself? And then I got every opportunity that I could see. There was a VP of an autonomous vehicle firm came into university and they said, this is what we do. And I went up to him and I said, I really hate cars. Show me that I'm wrong. Give me a placement. And he did, for some strange reason. And I went, and I wasn't proved wrong. I didn't enjoy that, but that was fine. That gave me the opportunity to see, just because I'm in engineering doesn't mean I want to work in cars. Mm-hmm. And that's what I kept getting. I was now at the stage where people kept thinking, you'll go and work in a car factory, or you'll work in aerospace. Mm-hmm. But I really didn't enjoy that because I didn't see that as my day-to-day, what I want to do. And then I was still applying for whenever I went from final year. I started to apply to grad jobs and still didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew that whatever I wanted to do, I wanted to have a purpose. And I think we can all say that if you find value and you're adding value to somebody's life, then you just find the purpose to get up in the morning. So I then applied for my final year of university, and I got a list of all these different dissertation options, and I went in. Thankfully, one of the lecturers at the university knew that I always kind of went against the grain, and I went in the day I was meant to submit what project I wanted to do, and I said, I don't really like them. Can I make my own? And he allowed me to do it for some crazy reason, and I submitted a dissertation idea in September 2019, and we had just sat down and said, what annoys me? What affects my life? What don't I like? And I talked about an injury that I had from ballet. So at this whole time, I was doing ballet and trying to fit into this engineering world and seeing how my love for ballet and craft affected engineering. And I never got to see that balance before. And I couldn't see anybody that was doing that as well. So for my dissertation, I said, how about a device to reduce rehabilitation time? Is it going to work? Is there already a device out there? And then I started to work on it and got to look at the impact of sport, look at the impact a ballet dancer has on their body as well as an American football player. And they're very similar. compared to what everybody would think. The intensity of these high impact sports are really close to the arts. And then I was doing it for a dissertation, and then I was going to go to my grad job, keep it really nice and easy. And then I decided to apply for Catalyst Invent. And we're starting to see a pattern here of you're in education or academia and you get this touch for entrepreneurship and you can't quite get away from it. So I applied while doing my degree, and when I finished up, I graduated, and in July 2020 I decided, let's go full-time onto the business. And this was all inspired from my background in ballet. Probably a big reason that I decided to do it is the fact that I got to see my mom being an entrepreneur from such a young age in a male-dominated industry. And then I also got the backing that so many places in Northern Ireland offer, like Catalyst offer a fantastic support. And I won the software category, and being able to get £3,000 to spend on whatever you want can actually massively help as a startup. And the impact that it can have is what seems like, what do you spend that on? You can spend that on a lot of things whenever you don't have to actually worry about the fine detail. You can cover legal, you can cover accountancy, things that people don't see as costs that aren't necessarily covered in a grant. So I've been able to be full-time on my business since July 2020. And today's quite special because we get to announce a Innovate UK grant that just came out today as well. So it's a big day, and I'm excited that it's on International Women's Day that we get to announce it and announce the next chapter of the business going forward.
Yeah. Thank you, Naomi. Congratulations on your grant as well. So you, along with others, I suppose, that factor of support, which is very important when people, both I think when you try to enter this kind of career pathway, but also when you're in it, and that support that happens. And so I can see how catalysts are very, very important in all of this.
Yeah.
So you're all very, very inspirational. So I'm sitting thinking, I do this all the time. When I come to things, I think, why do I do what I do? Why didn't I know about this? You know, I could have been doing something completely different. So we're going to open up now to a question and answer session, which just people can answer what they want. I'm going to, I think it's about keeping this quite simple, but I'm interested in knowing, like you've all talked about your journeys and we've talked about different things, but you know, what, if you had to name a couple of factors that were absolutely, you know, critical on you being, on you coming here and getting to this part of your journey, like I want to all individually talk to you and ask you lots of questions because my daughter's picking her GCSEs, but what would be, say, two critical factors that have got you to where you are? You know, is it school, is it parents, is it role models, is it yourself, you know, is it, Beth, will I come back to you just because it's been a while since we spoke to you, but I don't want to put you on the spot.
No, yeah, like just reflecting a bit back on my own experience, I definitely think, like you said, parents definitely at a younger age, definitely listen to your parents, folks. I can't recommend that enough. But also as you progress through your career, I definitely find that mentorship and sort of talking to people that you may not necessarily work with on a day-to-day, but getting input from people that have experienced what you've went through is really important. And that's how I've got the most value in my career so far, is really making the time to reach out to people and to learn about their past, what mistakes they made, if they have any sort of tools they use that they could recommend. I think mentorship and sponsorship as well. We don't see as many sponsorships coming, and that's definitely later in your career, sort of looking at like whenever you're trying to advance into a new role, a new opportunity, that can be beneficial. With mentorships, it's a bit more flexible, it's a bit more fluid, and it's generally driven by yourself. So it's about reaching out to people in different parts of a company or in different companies. And the thing is, like, it sounds daunting whenever you're slightly younger, but there's a lot of people that are really willing and really open to having these conversations. And I have yet to meet someone that has turned me away from having that conversation with them. Everyone is very receptive and willing to speak about their past. So I've definitely sort of focused on that for sure.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other factors that you think have been really influential in getting you where you are?
I think that we also need a counter narrative on this. So we have a lot of women all over the world and in our home country that don't have the support of family, and they're not fortunate enough to have parents that are there. And we women suffering, we're hearing about all the time in the news, particularly at the moment. So, you know, I think that for women in those positions, they need to be strong enough to believe in themselves, because if you don't believe in yourself, nobody else will. You know, so we have to be cognizant and that there are a lot of really young girls out there and young boys that have a lot of ability, but they don't have that support network there. So they need to know that they can believe in themselves. And in order to do that, you just need one person outside to actually listen to you. That one person could be a school teacher that you never knew existed, or it could be, you may not be lucky enough to go to school, it could be somebody just sitting in your village or in your town that you might know that takes the time to listen to you. So I do think there's that aspect to it as well.
Yeah, no, well, I completely agree with that, because that's my job on a day-to-day, but that's certainly what Women's Tech are about, you know, fighting that space. I always remember, and it's a very, very long time ago, it was a program about the transfer test, and it was actually somebody who we knew from school, didn't know about, and you were to see, and they were following families, and there was this, I think it was a young guy, a young boy, he was 10, and he really wanted to do it, and his parents were like, no, you're not doing that. Nobody's ever done that in this. But you know, his ambitions were just like thwarted at everywhere he turned. And I was like, that is just, you know, it's just terrible that his parents aren't going to support him doing whatever. And we find that, and so, and that's one of the things that I think as an industry, like tech is a way of actually, you know, kind of influencing, you know, the mitigation of poverty and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I absolutely agree. But are there other factors in terms of any of your journeys? Are there critical things apart from parents, mentors, supports?
I've just something came into my head there, like, and it's again a very early stage in my life in primary school, and I was 7 years old, so primary 3, and somebody came into the classroom, an external visitor, and handed us all of these little notebooks, and they had a picture of all these different questions, picture of a man, a woman, and both, and the question was, circle who you think can do this job, and it was like fireman, policeman, well, officer. She probably did say fireman and stuff. Probably did at the time. And I remember before the person came in, we were explaining the exercise, and the teacher at the time said, "Now just remember, everybody, before you do this exercise, there's no job that a man can do that a woman can also do." And so I circle for every answer. I circled both. A woman and a man can both do the same job. I remember chatting, and I felt really empowered at that young age. And I remember talking to my friends after, and like, that's so stupid. And I did feel really stupid. I was like, okay, why did I circle that a woman could be a firewoman? But I do think it's had like a lasting impact on my life. Like, who remembers a certain thing at the age of 7? But that's something that's always stuck with me. And now I think at that young age, I actually was right. You can do whatever job you want. It doesn't matter what gender you are.
Yeah. Okay. One of the areas I think that we also need to, you know, address maybe is around challenges that you come up against. So this happens all of the time, right? And I'm a great believer, I mentioned this earlier, but I'm a great believer that, you know, challenges are important in order to overcome them, to learn and to be successful. But, you know, are your challenges all the same? Or are they different? Are obstacles the same in this industry? So what challenges have you faced, and what have you done to overcome them?
I think I'll jump in now.
Go, Fiona.
I know Helen will have a lot to say about this too, I'm sure. But, I experienced several occasions where in that first job that I described, the one that they threw me in really at the deep end, and I was expected to go into a factory full of men and like design the products that they were going to build later. I ended up in several scenarios where we would go and visit other factories where we were outsourcing work, for example, where people didn't really know who I was or recognize that Fiona was a female name necessarily before I showed up. I'm talking about going to, you know, Asia or into Europe, things like that. And we would land there and my boss would be with me more or less to accompany me. So I wasn't traveling solo as this new graduate or undergraduate actually. And they would assume that I was his secretary and he was there to do the work. And there was an element of, I'm very grateful that he was supportive of that. And he immediately went, nope, Fiona's in charge here. This is the person you're here to talk to. I am here to support her. Very grateful for that. But there was also an element of what you touched on there where I had to step up to the plate and immediately appear to be confident and ready to do the work and clear in my communications. And in some ways, and I wonder if we've all faced this, I felt like I had to outperform the men in order to just be considered adequate at my job. And in some ways, that pressure has been beneficial in my career in that it has constantly kept me going out of pure determination, I think, like pushing the boundaries of things and trying different stuff. And that's been a good thing for me, but it could put people off.
Yeah.
And I think we maybe need to communicate that energy, that drive is something that we do have to overcome as a society, but let's harness it for now while there's still this bias, and let's just show them what we can do. I think that was the attitude that had to be taken, unfortunately, and I'd like to think things have changed. Am I wrong?
I can definitely chime in this one because again, for my placement, I was the very first female engineer they'd had in a very large company, and I actually, unfortunately, had the experience where a senior manager directly looked me in the eye and said, "This is why women shouldn't be engineers."
Oh my God.
And this was not in private. This was in front of quite a few people. And this is the first impact I had ever really had that someone head on was so discriminative. And I was like, okay. And I just left the room and, you know, hid in the workshop and had a wee moment, as most people would. And one of the other this senior manager also wasn't an engineer, to disclaim. He was not part of my team. He was completely separate. And I then, one of the other engineers found out, raced to find me and said, "I've already called HR." And that didn't even cross my mind. I just considered that's just the way people are. And it was a much older male that called him out, that said, "I will not accept this." So then in the next meeting in front of everybody, he said, "I have no time for the gender discrimination here, and I will be saying." So he actually mentioned it to all of the senior management team to address it. And I was very lucky that the engineering team actually all brought me aside and said, "We're on your side. Like, you're an engineer, we don't notice a difference. And we actually see how well you've outperformed other people because you've came in and we see that you've tried to push yourself harder." Exactly as Fiona said, you have to outperform others. I came and that's exactly what I felt I had to do. I had done it and it had been noticed. And it was all of my team actually then turned around and supported me. So the bias was definitely there. However, having the surrounding of people in your team that you know you can rely on was a big impact. And I think it's the importance of, if we're in a team setting, whether it's gender discrimination or any other type, to just have zero tolerance to it. And that's the big important thing. That's why we're here today, to actually just go, just everybody in a level playing field. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter what the bias is, whether it's gender or something else. It's just to level off that playing field, that we don't allow microaggressions or, you know, major aggressions to happen in workplace. So that's why we're here, to call it out and allow us to all have that playing field.
Mm-hmm. You can imagine if you're someone coming in very young And there's the whole thing about seniority, never mind age-wise, but seniority in a company, and somebody saying that to you, I haven't really thought about it that way, but there's nothing much you can say back to your boss or your boss five rungs up, so that's quite
I think you should though.
You
This
should,
is the
yeah,
thing. This is the
absolutely.
thing,
You shouldn't just take that. And I feel sorry for you that you felt like you had to just vacate the room, like maybe to compose yourself. But we should not take that whenever that arises. That is the point at which, for everyone, on this journey with us, that we should be standing up and going, I am more than capable of doing this better than you, actually. And the benefit of being the whole wonder of innovation is that you need people from different backgrounds, because innovation happens when two differing things collide, and that's where ideas come from. So that's what you spoke about with the likes of ballet and engineering collide. How often has that happened before? Hence innovation happens, right? So we need to encourage different kinds of people, including women, to enter into these roles if we want to see real innovation happening. If you put the same kind of cookie cutter people through STEM or into entrepreneurship roles, we'll just see the same cookie cutter results. We need to encourage that diversity to see the innovation happening.
Of course, there's a situation whereby it's not just men that behave like this, women behave like this as well. And I have been on the receiving ends of both. I think the message is that bad behavior will not be tolerated by anybody. So it's not about really the gender, it's about poor behavior. And the issue that we have when we deal with poor behavior is if a man says something back, he's really super confident and he's really standing up for himself. If a woman says something back, she's a bitch. Quite literally. That is, now we need to change that narrative so that, the woman is standing up for herself too. It is an equal playing field, yes, but we must call out bad behavior. And more importantly, the management structures in every company, institution or whatever must deal with bad behavior.
I agree with that one.
That is what needs to happen. That is the change. And it's not about women going, woe is me. It's about there is bad behavior and maybe that was accepted, but now that, kind of there are more women in these positions, bad behavior will not be tolerated. So we have to have the confidence to say, that is unacceptable. I do not like the way you behaved. This is why, because of A, B, C. And that's the kind of training we need to give young men and young women together so that they can empower themselves to make a difference. Because at the moment, the bad behavior isn't being dealt with. And that is the single biggest factor in all of this.
And when you are all in that learning environment, university, or before you start work, is there a space to learn this?
Absolutely not. Well, they don't facilitate it often. I mean, I've had several conversations. I was lucky enough to be in a leadership position in university as a student, and I got put through resilience training as a woman, and something I came out of it and I said, okay, well, that's great. And I'm very appreciative that I've been put through this training and I now know ways and I know myself better and I know how to deal with certain situations, but where's the training for the men to not do it? And they were like, oh, we'll think about it. And I said, no. I feel very passionate that every single student who came through this course should, before they even enter university, get bias training. And I said, and there should be a refresher before they go out in placement year and a refresher when they come back, because often what I found was the behaviour got worse as we went on. And I come from a course where there was 80 students and I was one of 5 girls. And that slowly dwindled and I felt like I was standing on my own at certain points. And what really did not help was they went out on placement year and they picked up bad behaviour from other colleagues and they brought that back in. And then when you mentor younger students, they see that attitude and that behaviour and then it becomes okay. And I had situations where I was told, yes, it would be great to have you in our team, but you're not strong at this subject. So maybe next time. And I hold myself quite proud that I did get a good grade in that subject, and proved them wrong. But that type of behaviour occurred after they had an experience of the workplace. And when you're in a similar age when you're on that placement year and someone shouts at you, you are still very young and you're still moldable as a person and you haven't maybe found your confidence. And I think the education system needs to do better to stamp this out before it even occurs in the first place.
Which brings me, these are none of the questions that I've down here, okay?
I love it.
She
Shades the script.
Exactly. There were two things. First of all, I mean, this is one's for me, and then right, a few of you mentioned that you went to girl only schools, right, female only schools, right, and I did as well. And then when I became a parent, I was like, no, you need to be out there in the world. And so my eldest went to co-ed, my youngest is in a girl only school, and I can absolutely, totally see the how girls thrive in a female only environment. Like, I mean, it's just completely flipped everything. So I want your thoughts on that. And I can't remember what the second one was something that you said. And the other part of this, in your design and your making of things and your innovation and creativity, like I'm chair of the Northern Ireland Women's Budget Group. So, you know, we look at money and spend and all this kind of stuff. And I mean, that piece where most things are made for men, as in the male body is the thing. So it doesn't fit our bodies, like seat belts and the way we have heart attacks, and there's a whole lot more, right? There's a book on it now. I mean, is that true? And are you the people who are changing this to actually take account of half of the population in the world? That it's things that you're for us, because if it's not diverse, it's been made for men. So they're my two questions.
Well, the good thing is vaccines are for men and women and children and everybody.
There's no difference.
So there's no difference.
Right,
We
okay.
treat it, obviously dose is different, you know,
Okay.
depending on, you know, young people. So to take your point, I could also add to the narrative that I too went to an all-girls school.
Okay.
Except they tried to give me speech classes in first year, and the goal was to make you into a young lady, which they failed drastically on.
Same.
So in fact, they wouldn't even let me ride my bike to school. And in fact, they wouldn't let you play football in break time or lunchtime. So I invented a new game called Stoneball, and we played football with a stone.
Oh my God.
But you're right. Girls feel more empowered whenever they have role models that tell them that they can be whatever they want to be, and every subject is for you. And I think it's a real shock to the system when then you go out into, say, university. Now, I will say, I can only speak on behalf of Queen's. Every academic staff in Queen's does do bias training, and they've introduced all of that. And the staff in Queen's, like they have really come a long way in the last 20 years. I will say that. But nevertheless, it's how do you then deal with somebody that potentially isn't, you know, conforming or behaving well? And certainly, you know, if we would be aware of this in the School of Pharmacy at Queen's, if there was anything that went on that was untoward, we would be nipping that in the bud. So, you know, but you don't want to go running to your superiors and complain about this. But when girls come out from an all-girls school, it is a real shock to the system to see people behaving really badly.
Yeah.
It really is. And you're just so unprepared for that. And you don't understand, you don't compute. I mean, everybody here is in science, okay? Or they're in engineering, and you have a certain way your mind thinks. It's not black and white, but the way that your mind thinks is you don't do nuances, you don't do politics, you don't do anything like that. So you don't understand whenever people start to behave in that way.
Yeah. We're so logical.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and you can't compute why would somebody behave that way. So I do think there is a gap there in terms of making both young women and young men understand. And I really wish, it would be my wish in life that we didn't have to have international women's events, a women anything event. We could just have a people event, people where we're all the same. Because this is not about bashing the men. There are absolutely millions and millions of great men out there. There are millions and millions of great women, but there are also those that just don't behave well. And we need to change that.
I'd like to touch on, I think your question was along the lines of, is there inherent bias in the rules surrounding the way that we design and manufacture product? And yes, unfortunately, there still is. I was involved in crash testing products at Millbrook. So that's like the official UK centre for, you know, car approvals. And I was shocked, actually, maybe slightly naive when I arrived there, to find that all of the dummies are male adults.
Yeah.
And
Still,
and this was only a small number of years ago. And I remember asking one of the crash test engineers, you know, so how do these crashes affect females? And he said, we don't know. This is the standard dummy. This is what we do. So that is definitely still the case. It's built into the legislation. That's not something that's easy for us to change, but we can definitely, you know, if you're in this kind of space, you can make a case for your product being designed with that person in mind or with that user in mind, even if the legislation or the rules that you're having to work in don't necessarily apply to that. So it is something that we do need to be a little bit more conscious of with respect to the way things are built and established. Here, there's a great book, Mothers of Invention, and I wonder if that's the one that you're referring to.
I haven't seen that one.
Fantastic.
Okay.
It just highlights kind of like how historically, like it's about gender. It's not just about women. It's about, you know, for some reason us separating humanity into several bins, whether it's male or female or by nationality or whatever, and that bias breaking things for hundreds of thousands of years unnecessarily. So I would love to see us all just considering people as people, humans as humans. And that would get us to a much better place as a whole. We would all benefit from that approach, not just drivers.
No, I understand that. I mean, I suppose I've often thought that if I was in a car accident, and hopefully not, I'd be garroted, right? Because of the way that the seatbelts are.
Yeah.
But I mean, there are times, I think, when you know, that certainly in that instance, and other like kind of health instances too, that you do need to be aware of gender differences. You know, we're not all the same, and so our bodies are different. Or, you know, sometimes the things that we do are different, and sometimes there is just really also bad design. I'm thinking about kitchens. I love cooking, you know, which is like a hobby kind of thing, and it's like, who made that? Who made that light that goes in there? The light can't change the bulb or whatever. Like, there's just things that
what you've just seen there is an opportunity. Any problem that you spot like that is an opportunity. Yes.
Just trying to recruit you.
I'm going to tell you, I mean, anything could be better than the way it is at the moment.
I think medicine is very far advanced though, because we have personalized medicine for every type of disease really. And so it's not just differences between male and female, but it's differences within metabolism in females per se. It's differences in a particular tumor type that you might have, or differences in a particular stage of disease that you might have. So I do think medically they have moved on to realize that diseases are a lot more complex. I would also say there's a big gap, I hate to say it, between Northern Ireland and England. The gap is massive. We are almost sort of still very patriarchal here. You know, I do most of my work over in Alderley Park with Medicines Discovery Catapult. I'm sitting in a room full of men and women, 16, 20 people going through the technology. It's mind-blowing. These people used to work in companies like AstraZeneca, Sanofi, whoever. It's phenomenal, and it doesn't matter a jot who you are there. And it's just, I feel so buzzing every time I come away from Alderley Park, and I have renewed vigor, and then I keep trying to battle the cause here to kind of go, this is how it should be, you know.
Yeah, I would have experienced exactly the same thing when you kind of leave here. But that's important, I think, then to leave here and then come back and bring it back with you. So if you could change one thing about the industry, just one thing, thinking about your journey, what would that be? Or maybe something in the future. Beth, do you want to come in again?
Yeah, like I think sort of focusing on the tech community. So that would sort of be where me and Chloe would sort of fit. I think there are more benefits sort of coming out for women at different stages in their lives. Like you're seeing sort of Channel 4 offering menopause leave. You're seeing like whenever you miscarry, there's companies now that offer leave for that as well. And I think it's sort of acknowledging that, like that was mentioned earlier, women have many more different stages in their lives than men do generally. And acknowledging those stages and supporting them through those stages and making them aware that like we value you and we want you to take the time to sort of look after yourself and then come back and keep adding value to the business, I guess. But yeah, I'm seeing more of that coming through. There's still a lot we could be doing better. But yeah, I would definitely like to see that sort of in the future.
Okay, so that's in way policies, like work-based policies that recognise maybe what women need, I suppose, compared to certainly with men. Yeah.
So I think Chloe, did Aflac actually do that recently?
I think there is one coming. I don't want to say solid yes, but it's something we've been looking into, and I'm on our diversity, equity and inclusion committee, and things like baby loss awareness policies, supporting transgender people in the workplace. What are things that we may not necessarily relate to ourselves, but as people who are in a somewhat of a minority in a STEM area, what are the other minorities that we can also advocate for while we're also doing the rest of the work for women in STEM? And that's something I think really needs to change. It's not about women in tech and men in tech. It's about an equal playing field, regardless of what you identify as or who you are as a person or what you need. And whether you're something I'm also quite passionate about is people who are neurodivergent. They don't need the same workplace as other people. And how do we ensure that everyone can come into work and be themselves and have an environment that they can do their best within? There's definitely companies who are doing it really well, but I don't think we're quite there yet, unfortunately.
I think if you said yes, then it would be implemented next week or the week after.
I don't want to jinx it.
Sian, on your journey, and which is more, I mean, it's moved more into the entrepreneurial kind of route now in the last few weeks. Is there anything that you would change? Is there one thing that you would change that would have made any of this easier? Or maybe it's ahead of you?
It could be ahead of me, but I'm actually thinking about something. Maybe it's more a personal problem. I don't know. I'm sorry to bring it to this, but like anytime I get my period on a weekend, I'm like, thank God it came on a weekend and ruined my weekend, so that I don't have to disrupt my working week. Because I'm sorry to talk about this. Like, and why am I saying sorry? Why am I saying sorry to bring up the P word? Really? And like, yeah, I feel like it can really, as I say, really disrupt my working week. And I could do with a day off every month for that, but like, you would never ask for that. Oh God, you would never. I would never go and say I actually could do with a day off. I'm not feeling good.
Can I introduce you to Fiona?
Yeah.
Who has a product?
Yeah,
there's only one left to give to me.
I think this is maybe a theme in my life. If I get annoyed about something, I'll do something about it. Whether or not it's the sensible thing to do is questionable. But I got annoyed enough about this, especially being in a very male-oriented space. We were talking about this earlier, where I didn't feel like I could talk about it or visibly even be off my game slightly for a day. Like, I didn't feel like I could sit at the desk with a hot water bottle, to the point that I designed a solution for it. So that was kind of my foray into entrepreneurship, but it was because I was angry and frustrated about it. So yes, I definitely think there's something to be said for legislation and understanding that, maybe there are some different needs. One thing that I think should be made equal is maternity and paternity time. I'm shocked that paternity is 2 weeks here. That's unfair on fathers and mothers. I think it was Iceland in the 80s that just went equal, same amount of time, and instantly the gender pay gap disappeared, which I think is fascinating. So I think a lot of employers see women as a liability, especially women of a certain age. They'll go, oh, they're probably just going to take the job and have babies and be absent a lot of the time. But if men have exactly the same, time off requirements, if somebody does have a child, then that difference has disappeared. I would love to see that happening in the near future.
Yeah. I would agree with that too, because actually I'm in a place in my life where I'm recently married, and that's ahead of me. As you say, that is ahead of me, maternity leave. And I'm thinking, gosh, I'm really going to have to plan this so that I can leave at a time where the business isn't going to fall apart if I leave or I'm absent. And there really isn't a solution in terms of paternity leave for that, because I actually, my partner's a woman. So I mean, that sometimes is another thing, I guess. it could overlap with being a woman and also being gay. I think I've struggled with quite a lot. And if I do something that a boy inherently would do, I'm called a lesbian, even without me divulging that information. But yeah, I am worried about taking maternity leave in the future. And so I guess coming back to the legislation thing, I don't know. Maybe the government could support us better, because I don't know.
It's awful.
It's awful.
Yeah, statutory
And
maternity leave is very bad.
my wife at the minute, we're talking like she might go first because she's older. So that's what she says anyway. But she's choosing to potentially do that while she's a locum doctor.
Yeah.
So she's not going to get any benefits from her workplace, and it's going to be a tough year. But she doesn't want to take the time off, because in her clinic at the moment, somebody's taken a second maternity leave, and nobody's outwardly said, "Oh God, there she's off again." But it's kind of like there's a kind of air of, "Oh, they're not too happy about that," which shouldn't be the way.
It's I suppose it's one of those things, isn't it? That it's women that have to decide. That's something that they, there's a certain amount of time if you want to have children, there's a certain period of time that you're going to have them, and it does make it difficult. And I understand that it's not your maternity leave that's the issue; it's the next 18 to 25 years.
Yeah, I know.
Thinking about it's not just in all honesty, that bit's the easy bit. But for many, if you have a career, and people have often said you just hang on by your fingernails, to keep at that, and it's important. I am interested in the issue around periods, though. I mean, in all honesty, you're all here, right? And if this is still an issue, and stigma's gone and taboo's gone around it and everything else, but I know my daughters suffer. Why has something not happened around this? And what would be the interim fix around this? Is it a day off every month? I mean, is that the fix? Is it you work from home that day? I mean, what would be an interim fix for people around that? Because this is an issue.
Well, yeah, I'm sorry to jibe in again, but I guess it has to be kind of flexible solution to it, because it's not the same every month. It's really, really not. You can't predict what day you're going to be sore on and that kind of stuff. But I think, you have to have an understanding team around you, and you have to have an understanding workplace. Yeah. And there's a stigma with it. You're not going to go to your boss or someone say, "Sorry, I have to work from home today because I've got the period." Nobody would admit to that. I don't think I would at the minute. And also there's another thing about it that
I would.
I know, and I'm maybe at this kind of timid stage still where I'm like, I can't say it, because then there's been times in my life I've maybe snapped back at somebody or stood up for myself, like, "Oh, are you on your period?" That's. And sometimes that comes from women too. Are you on this? And
so I have a chief operating officer, Dara, and he knows more about my cycle and everything that goes on in my life than I do. And I say, "Dara, sorry, really bad tummy today. Got a migraine. I'm leaving early." He said, "No, that's fine. Doesn't want to talk about it, but that's fine." That's good. Perfect. That works well. And I call it out, and I've always called it out.
Yeah, and I should do that. I really should, because. And again, a personal thing, but it is biologically being a female. It's not just the pain for me. I actually suffer from really, really, really bad PMS, to the point where I could be depressed 2 weeks of the month, which if you add that up, as my mum said, that's 6 months of the year.
That's half your life.
That's half my life, but I still have to go into work, and days I feel like I crumble and
we need to get this sort of chat.
We do, and it's maybe just me. It's just the chance solution.
Whenever I was in my all-girls school, it was a very open conversation, actually, because you were just like, "Who's here to listen?" And even the male teachers would have been like, "Are you sore today?" They wouldn't have minded at all. And there was one girl that once a month she would take a day off, and I remember so clearly that we all just knew, so we would just organise that we could get her work for home. And the teachers didn't help, but it was us coming together. So as you said, if we can get that platform in place that you can either work from home or something that suits you, because for her it was, she can do it from home and we can send her all our notes, and after, if we wrote anything down, we could have just taken a photo and sent it to her. And it made such a difference to her, because otherwise at the very start she didn't tell us why she was always off, and you could start to clock it up why. And that was whenever we started to see, and I think whenever I changed to go from all girls school to almost an all boys university, because there are so many guys in the course, I just didn't change that. But if I was to say, I would just now openly say it, if it's an issue. And I think that's really important, that Helen, as you said, just tell them.
It's not going to be a shock to their system. I
No.
mean, and if they don't know, they
Shouldn't be a
should know.
mystery.
Yeah, you know,
Yeah.
and you are who you are, and you should just tell it as it is.
It's empathy, isn't it? It's just empathy. It's just, again, it's back to being human. But I think actually there is a positive message happening. There's a new rhetoric coming around this because there is a movement to get free period products into places of work and into schools. And it's not so much about that being free and available. That is amazing though, because there's a whole aspect of society that doesn't have access to those things, those basic needs. That is brilliant. But it's starting a conversation about why those are necessary, about when those are necessary, about other needs there. And it's a little visible reminder, I think, that it's a step in the right direction, absolutely.
Just to
Sorry, go on ahead, Beth.
just to reiterate that, so Datadog in Paris, we have gender neutral bathrooms, and within those gender neutral bathrooms there are period products for women, so men will see them regardless. There's also like deodorant, hair bubbles, hairspray, teeth, mouth freshener. So it, like you said, it's just making that aware and breaking down that stigma that there needs to be men and women's toilets, and they're like, you need to hide that away from everybody. It's being here long enough, it feels normal for me now, but I can understand that is not normal across the board in different workplaces.
I nearly sent Catalyst into a tailspin in the design of our new labs. So I insisted that I wanted gender neutral toilets made. I wanted to be enclosed cubicles, so they're totally private. I wanted, hand basin and a dryer all in that cubicle, so everybody could do whatever they needed to do within that cubicle, sanitary bins, whatever, all there. What's wrong with the toilets the way they are? No, that's not the future. I want them to be gender neutral, so they're fully private. So, I'm starting a revolution here in Catalyst already. And I can't tell you the price of those toilets, but we're going for it anyway.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, we have 10 minutes left. I just want to check if there's any questions from any of our virtual audience before, because I do have one last question. Oh, that's okay. That's good. Obviously, the questions are good enough. That's exactly. Okay.
You did a great job.
Did a great job.
Or
Okay,
they've all switched off.
So one of the things, and I've always enjoyed this. So, my question is about life hacks. What is something that is important for you? What piece of advice would you give in your, some of your earlier career, some of your a bit later in your career, but what is the one piece of advice that you would give in terms of keeping all of this going? And I did want to just say, if you want to say something as well, Chloe and Beth, about, I know the women who code, and I don't know if you work with girls. I'm interested in also in engaging girls and what makes girls engage in this industry, right? So, how do you
want to wrap that all?
If you would do that there, and everybody else, I want your hat. We've got 10 minutes.
Okay,
Right,
so
you go first.
I'll call on you, Beth. So my life hack can tie into both. So I did a piece of work recently, and my team went through this How You Think course. And it told me, what type of thinker I am. Am I analytical? Am I a planner? Do I have emotions? And am I an ideas person? And no surprise there, I came out as a big planning person. And this kind of ties into Women Who Code. So I do a few different meetup groups here in Belfast, Women Who Code being one of them. And unless I was meticulously organised into where I need to be and when, I would never be anywhere on time. So my life hack is, as soon as something pops into my brain, I will either, if it's for someone, I will message them and I will say, you don't need to answer this now, I just need to get this out of my head. Or I will write it down on paper, and my phone, it buzzes 20 times a day of reminder to do this, reminder to do this. So my life hack is write everything down. That feeds very nicely into Women Who Code, because if I didn't do it, nothing would get done.
Wouldn't happen. Right, okay.
I can't take credit for that because I'm very new to the team. As a director, I only started in September. So that sort of vision like it needs planned out on such a long time scale to understand what we can do. And not a lot of our work is with schools, but I definitely think there is a narrative there that needs to be said of, you get careers teachers in schools and you get people in to do, from companies to do presentations, but are they the right people going in? Are these, if you're talking about a STEM and engineering topic, you know, are you seeing people like these fabulous ladies here and directors and C-suite females saying this is something that you can do, and maybe it's a career you should consider? It's something that has been in my mind for a while, that maybe we should be doing a bit more with Women Who Code, but we go into universities and maybe at that stage it could be too late.
Okay, we can have a conversation. So we're definitely going to have a
I would like to
conversation.
join Women Who Want to Code.
Yes.
Oh, Women Who Code isn't, just to clarify, you don't have to know how to code.
Yeah.
You're
That's good
welcome
to
if you
know.
are technical, non-technical business. You're all welcome in our community. Men too.
Inclusive.
Inclusive, we love allies.
Okay. Fiona?
I'm going to go back to the side quest piece, in that when I think of, when you asked me to talk about my journey, I think honestly what I've done on the side has been more valuable in contributing to where I am today than what my day job was. So I suppose I would encourage you to, if there's something that you're interested in or something that you see needs fixing, go and try it. Like, bias to action. Don't just sit and get angry or you know, sit on an idea and wish that somebody would do something about it. Like, have a crack at it and see what happens. Like Naomi said, like, open all the doors, try all the opportunities, and just take up things even if you don't necessarily know quite why you're doing it. It's fun, and you'll learn things, or you'll go down little rabbit holes that take you to new places that you would never have imagined for yourself. It's kind of impossible, I think, to sit and plan your whole life ahead. Like, there's no way I could have said I would have been on this path today or sitting in this seat today. But it's probably happened because I've opened doors here and there and had a go at things, and it's all right to close the door again. I don't like what was in that room. I'm gonna close that door.
Monsters Inc.
It's not good. But because you're messing about with things and it's not too serious, you can do that. So I would encourage people to have a go, even though that's quite big.
Oh, that's a good one. Helen?
I think I would have 2 pieces of advice to give young people. Try to have less empathy, but have more compassion. So somebody that has compassion jumps in there and helps. Somebody that has empathy doesn't make the situation any better. So that may be a first piece of advice. My second piece of advice would be strong, Helen, piece of advice. If you honestly do not believe in yourself, nobody else will. So you've got to row your own path. Even if you're on your own, stick to your guns.
Okay.
Me.
Shannon.
Well, sometimes I have to give myself a little pep talk, and you know, there's days when you might lose a bit of confidence in yourself, which, you know, we can do. We can talk ourselves out of things, and I actually get to the point, and I sound mad, but I'm talking to myself and I'm sitting myself down. I'm like, no, even if it's just a phone call, it's like, it's just a phone call. It's not an angry, you know, there's not a monster on the other side of on the other end of that telephone. Like, you know, it's silly things. As Helen says, you have to believe in yourself, and you have to tell yourself you can do this, even if it is walking up to a mirror and telling your own reflection that you can do it. You have to have confidence, and don't be afraid to take time out here and there just to gather yourself and build your confidence back up again.
Yeah. Okay. Naomi?
I think a big one is to learn to be vulnerable. Learn what you're wanting to share and what you're happy to share. And it's the days that I then get a message over Instagram from somebody that's in high school that said, I've been able to see this about you, and would you mind having a 10-minute phone call? And me being vulnerable allowed them to reach out to me because they felt a kind of connection. And then I've actually been really, like, I also feel like I've been able to give back to somebody that needed that role model. So for me, I've been able to have that in my life, and I had that fortune, but it doesn't mean everybody else does. So for me, it's really important to allow other people to see your journey and be vulnerable when you feel like you're comfortable with it. You don't have to share everything. If you're not comfortable, don't. And then allow somebody to kind of take 10 minutes of your day and then see. It's really nice to watch them and watch them grow. And to see how what you do can also impact others because they might not be privileged enough to have someone around them that's going to support them. So be that support whenever you can.
Yeah, I often think that giving is a lot easier than receiving. You know, in many different ways. It's a lot. You know, it's not. Well, you get much more from it. It's just easier. Beth, do you have a life hack that you'd like to share with us?
My life hack is a bit more mundane for sure. I like to get into work early and to have a cup of coffee when no one else is in the office and just sit and get to inbox zero. That could be also another life hack. Always try and reach inbox zero. But sort of feeding into that. So Chloe and I, we like have a coffee morning every Thursday with the Women Who Co community. And unfortunately, I haven't been able to make it as much moving to Paris, but it's a great way to sort of start your day with a cup of coffee and just having a space where you can chat about any problems you have in work, any barriers you've came across. We've also had men join the call and share their sort of problems and any issues they're facing. And I really find having that whenever it's very informal environment just sets me up to really face any challenges I come across during that week. So yeah, I would definitely recommend if anybody wants to join the Bites and Brew calls. Chloe can tell you more after.
And that's okay. Shameless plugs are good. I said, well, if I have time for coding in my life, I have time for nothing but maybe coding. Right, I think we've come to the end of our session. I want to say a massive thank you to all of you. Honestly, I mean, your journeys, your stories, and it's not even that, it's what's ahead of you all. It's so exciting, you know, and I can see it. You're in the middle of it, you know, but I can see where this is all going, and you're going to make things that make me feel better and all the rest of it. You're all really, really inspirational, and it's been, I knew I was going to enjoy this morning. It just, first of all, it was like, this is the wrong place for me, and I was like, I'm going to really love this. So I've really enjoyed chairing this event and learning from all of you, and it's the best way I could have spent International Women's Day. So massive thanks for inviting me. So I hope you've enjoyed it, and because we could talk about so many different things. But today there's problems, there's challenges, but I mean, it's also about celebrating, and I enjoyed my breakfast outside. It's about celebrating where we are and the friends we have and the support we have around us, both from men and women, you know, it's that, but you know, we're definitely moving forward. That's what I say, we're not going backwards, and that's what's important. So you're all fantastic. So thank you all very much, and thank you all as well. Thank you.